The City of Tshwane Council has rejected and withdrawn the special leave for the embattled Mayor Stevens Mokgalapa. The council says Mokgalapa needs to reapply for his leave through the council and not his political party, the DA. Mokgalapa intended to go on special leave following the sexual relations audio leaks scandal. In the audio, Mokgalapa could be heard discussing colleagues with his MMC Sheila Sinkubuche. Council is also expected to hear a motion of no confidence against Mokgalapa, sponsored by both the ANC and the EFF. Currently, MMC Abel Tau has been appointed acting mayor for this troubled Tshwane Metro. All right, and to discuss the situation here in Johannesburg and in Pretoria, we joined from our Pretoria studios by political analyst, Professor Dirk Kotze. Prof, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the SABC News channel. Now, the election for a new mayor for the city of Johannesburg has been postponed to next week, Wednesday and Thursday. What do you make of these developments?
Well, what we've seen today is an acknowledgement by all three parties by implication that none of them are in a position to be able to receive a majority. The two main parties, the ANC and the DA, if you count together with their own votes, those of their supporting parties, none of them have reached the point of having 136 votes. The decisive vote, or one can say the kingmaker to a large extent, is the EFF with their 30 votes there. And at the moment, it's not clear for which of the two parties, either the DA or the ANC, the EFF in the end will vote. I think the strategy of the EFF is very similar to what they've done in Nelson Mandela Bay, is to go for one of the smaller parties. In this case, I think they themselves want to be the choice to say, well, we will support one of the two parties, but then the EFF candidate must become the mayor ultimately.
We understand, of course, that the Speaker will seek legal advice on how the process is expected to take place. But from where you're sitting, do you think this could be some delaying tactics perhaps from the DA side? Because the EFF said that they agreed indeed with the Speaker that the sitting should be postponed today, but the ANC on the other hand saying that this move is just the DA trying to give the two parties more time to come to some sort of an agreement.
Well, I think that is the case. I think all three parties actually are going to use this time in order to see if they cannot reach an agreement with the EFF. What we know for a fact is that the rules for the election of a mayor is very clear, and that is that they must have 50% plus one of the total number of members, irrespective of how many abstain or who are absent. That's irrelevant for the outcome. We've seen after the election in August 2016 how the mayors were elected in the past also. The same procedure applies also for a motion of no confidence in the mayor, as well as for the approval of budgets. So these procedures are well established. You don't need new legal advice or legal opinions about it. But what it does, it creates now an opportunity for them until next week in order to continue with their negotiations to see if they cannot reach or strike a deal with some of their partners.
And I suppose, Prof, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next week, Wednesday and Thursday, because you have the EFF now fielding its own candidate, Musano Vela, and they're very adamant that they will indeed take part in the election with their own instead of supporting the ANC and the DA. Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So as you say, there might be some bargaining happening behind the scenes. Of course, during this week, I think there were also talks that any political party that can help the EFF to get this particular position in Johannesburg, they might also work together with the EFF for the City of Tshwane.
Yes, I think that is part of in the mix, in the negotiations or in the bargaining that's taking place. That was also the case earlier this year, just up to July, where the EFF wanted to negotiate or renegotiate with the DA about positions in Johannesburg as well as Tshwane. with the idea of getting the mayor's position in Tshwane for the EFF. That collapsed, and that led to the withdrawal of the EFF from the strategic relationship with the DA. And since then, this relationship, well, to a large extent, does not exist anymore. But what we are seeing now is that to some extent it must either be revived under new conditions, or that the EFF and the ANC must come together. But for example, here in Tshwane, the relationship between the EFF and the ANC is very acrimonious. That's almost worse than the relationship with the DA. So that option is almost not possible at this stage. And I think this is the real dilemma for all the parties, is that there's not an obvious relationship that does exist. And the final scenario, which I think most of them want to avoid, is that the council is dissolved and that they must have new elections, like what happened, for example, in the municipality of Metsi-Maholo some time back.
But the ANC is obviously not very happy with this postponement today. We understand that they're looking into approaching the court to stop this particular postponement. Do you get a sense that it might get a bit dirty going forward?
I guess so, that because of this situation, which is not clear-cut, the ANC's own position is also problematic, because they have a deficit of about 25 seats before they can reach the line of, or the target of 136 votes. They have 214. If they even add the 5 seats of the IFP, which is actually on the DA side now, and as well as the African Independent Congress, which normally votes together with the ANC, and even some other parties, then they still won't reach the point of 136 votes. So the ANC, if they went in today and continued with the election, they would not have received a majority. So I think that is why there's also now an opportunity for the ANC to see if they cannot renegotiate or try to negotiate with a deal with the IFP, as well as the EFF, and see if they can't reach a new dispensation which does not exist at the moment.
Let's just quickly reflect on the 3 candidates, Prof, that have been fielded by the 3 political parties. You have Musa Novela for the EFF, Funzela Ngobeni, a current member of the Mayoral Committee of the Democratic Alliance, and then Jeff Makubu. ANC really making their preferences known publicly a bit later than the rest of the other political parties. Who is this Jeff Makubu? Because the Democratic Alliance has already objected to him, saying that this is the very same person who scored an estimated 30 million rand from the City of Johannesburg by acting as an influence broker. What do you make of that?
Yes, that is the reports that we've seen in the media also about him. There's very little actually known about him. He has some qualifications in the business field and in the management field. But he's not a well-established political figure, in the sense that he has a long history in the council, that he has a sort of a public political profile also. So from the perspective of the rest of the country, beyond Johannesburg, there's actually very little known about him. That actually applies to all 3 candidates of all 3 parties. The EFF's the same. He's the regional leader of the EFF. He has been in this position since 2013, but he has only been elected in 2016 as a councillor for Johannesburg. And then the MMC of Finance of the DA is now their candidate. He is also the leader of government affairs within the council, but he's not playing the same, or he does not have the same political profile, public profile, as Herman Mashaba or any of the previous mayors of Johannesburg. So in that sense, they are all unknown factors for us at the moment.
Let's just quickly, Prof, we've run out of time, reflect on the City of Tshwane very quickly. The council rejecting and withdrawing the special leave for Mayor Stevens Mokgalapa, and also let's also look into the motion of no confidence against the mayor, both sponsored by the ANC and the EFF, that is expected to take place.
Yes, there has been several motions of no confidence in the past. First in Solim Simanga in the past, that they tried to table. None of them were successful. And there's very similar dynamics there, and that is that neither the DA nor the ANC will have a majority in Tshwane without the EFF. They are, again, the kingmakers in the metro. And as I've said earlier on, the EFF officially withdrew from their relationship with the DA in July already. So if there's a motion of no confidence, and one of the parties walk out, and that very often happens, like for example, the EFF walks out if it is an ANC a motion of no confidence, then there's not enough votes in order to pass it, and then they normally withdrew the motion of no confidence. I think a similar situation is going to maybe appear again, because parties don't want to be defeated when it comes to a motion of no confidence. They'd rather withdraw it so that they can hopefully table it at a later stage again and then be successful. So this is going to be an ongoing, very difficult situation, given the fact that the DA is not anymore in the secure position, that they know that they are supported at important points by the EFF. Oh. Under normal conditions, they can take decisions, but when it comes to important decisions, like, for example, the election of a mayor or when the passing of a budget, then they need a majority of 50% plus one, and then that is also when they need the EFF. And that will makes it uncertain for them under certain circumstances whether they can really have a stable government in Tshwane.
All right, Prof, that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate your insights all the time. Professor Dirk Kotze, a political analyst, joining us live from our studios in Pretoria.